Hello, I'm Jordan Midler and welcome to the top 10 games of the decade. And what a decade it's been. Do you remember what it was like 200,000 years ago in the year 2010? Politicians didn't have dick-waving contests on Twitter, they were just stuck in a loveless marriage. Vaping wasn't a thing, well, unless you were an Icelandic volcano. Tiger's Wood was never off the news, and Glee had just screamed its way onto our televisions, forever ruining some of your favourite songs. But since that time, which now feels like somewhere the Doctor might visit, it was so long ago, games have been expanding and evolving more rapidly than ever before. The era of the live game, the death of motion control, and almost the entire PS4 and Xbox One generation took place in less than a decade. Not to mention the proliferation of things like Twitch and YouTube, meaning that even a sour-faced liberal idiot who looks a bit like a knockoff young Kelsey Grammer can scream their opinions on the latest video games to literally tens of people. So many amazing games have released in the last decade that picking only 10 feels almost cruel, but I am nothing but cruel and I'm being paid a decade's worth of license fee to do this, so let's get started. I've even worn a bloody blazer to the occasion because that's how serious and prestigious this list is. Here are my top 10 games of the decade. You'll probably disagree, almost certainly strongly, but I suggest you remember that it's my show and therefore law. Number 10, Hitman.
That's not a name.
So make it one.
Alright. Agent 47.
But Hitman came out 20 years ago, you tweet hilariously through grease-stained fingers. But no, I'm of course referring to Hitman 2016, the reboot of the adventures of everyone's favourite Phil Mitchell cosplaying murderer, Agent 47. For a game whose release schedule was less solid than mine after a kebab, Hitman was the rare example of a staggered content release helping the game's replayability. Instead of going through one of the game's incredibly detailed missions once and proceeding to the next one for the story, you were forced to run the mission multiple times, learning new techniques as you play, uncovering secret areas of the map on your 4th or 5th playthrough, and triggering assassinations so elaborate and hilarious, it was like if Lee Harvey Oswald had done a 360 no-scope. The magic of Hitman was that even when things went a bit carry-on contract killer, you could still wrestle it back. Did you launch a katana across a busy square, or sprint over to the church and change into a priest's outfit, and the people of Sapienza will never speak of it again? The sequel doesn't recapture the magic because it doesn't need to. It's arguably a better game since it has all of Hitman's content included, as well as all the new maps. But it was the slow drip feed of content and necessity to play through the same mission until you could draw the map from memory that made the original such a surprise and so incredibly fun. Number 9. Batman Arkham City.
Remember, we use the priority target. Surround him!
Hands in the air, Wayne. We have Wayne.
Target secured.
Batman Arkham City is a rare example of a band making a jaw-dropping, genre-defining debut album and then following it up with something that expands on the formula while keeping the essentials of what made the original great. It may be somewhat controversial, but I actually think that City's more open take on the moody Git is a better Batman fantasy than the seminal Arkham Asylum. While the first game created a combat system the echoes of which we're still dealing with today, it never truly captured the spirit of skulking through desolate rooftops and appearing from nowhere to dislocate hip bones quite as well as City. It's a game that I still like just gliding around in, occasionally swooping down to introduce baddies' foreheads to the heel of my boots. Its story could stand shoulder to shoulder with some of Batman's best, and that's largely because it feels like someone was walking with the manuscript for the 10 best Batman graphic novels, fell, mixed them all up, and then submitted that as the plot. Whereas Asylum was, oh remember this guy, City was, oh remember this very specific story motif, and as someone who spent many hours in the ominous corners of Forbidden Planet, I appreciate that immensely. I didn't need another one though. At the point where you've given Batman a tank, it's kind of hard to suspend disbelief that he's not murdering hundreds of people per game. Oh no, Master Bruce, this tank shoots non-lethal missiles. Number 8, Portal 2.
Now, you've been under for quite a lot longer, and it's not out of the question that you might have a very minor case of serious brain damage.
Do you know how hard it is for a game to be genuinely funny? Do you want to know the secret of comedy? Timing. It's difficult enough to craft a joke when you're in control of absolutely everything the audience sees, like in a film, but in a game, you have to account for the player running too far ahead, or getting distracted by a bit of dirt on a wall, or generally jumping around like a temperamental child in the world's most infuriating doctor's waiting room. Valve didn't only succeed in making arguably the funniest game ever made, they also included a best-in-class puzzle game too. The puzzles are just as good at making you feel at 1 minute like the smartest person on the planet, And the other, like you're so stupid you have to make sure to take your trousers down before you have a shit. Portal was such an unexpected gem that making a sequel to it seemed like a task next to pushing a piano up Ben Lomond with your teeth, but by expanding on the story of Aperture Science and Chell's lineage, they balanced the hilarious with the intriguing and the puzzling with the exploratory. There are few things that would get me more excited these days than a Portal 3, although thinking about it, it would probably be in VR, and there are cheaper ways to make yourself vomit so hard you detach a retina. If they never make a third one, at least it ended with one of gaming's most genuinely hilarious finales. GLaDOS gets a lot of praise and deservedly so, but pour one out for my boy Wheatley, Stephen Merchant's finest hour. Number 7, Red Dead Redemption 2.
I'll keep her in black, on your behalf. You think on that, boy?
Well, maybe you shall, sir. And maybe other events will transpire.
You best stick to them books, because mark my words on this. Vengeance is an idiot's game. Mrs. Downs, thank you for your punctuality.
Few games instilled the pre-release excitement in me of a Rockstar game. It was like Christmas Eve for a month, every day getting closer to the moment I'd finally be able to ride into town, call someone a dauber in Old West speak, and proceed to launch them through a window. That would have been enough, but the fact that after said dauber bashing, the patrons of the bar would comment on how I was suddenly head to toe in horseshite proved to me that Red Dead Redemption 2 is a special game. The world is so big that the map needs to be printed on a novelty check to be anywhere near intelligible. I played just about nothing else for months, and there are still parts of the world I didn't go to. Rockstar are the masters of packing their game with little secrets that make players hunt for years to find out if they're true, and at this point if you told me they had an entire working version of GTA San Andreas in a cave only accessible during an eclipse, I'd believe you. The finale also made me cry all the fluid out of my body. I was sitting at my desk at about 4 in the morning when Arthur pulled his hat out of his bag, and That's the Way It Is started playing. It was as if I'd just been told that everyone in my family had died simultaneously. Honestly, I could have got my pubes waxed with super glue and I'd have been in less pain. Now this is the entry on the list that I have the most issues with as a game. Arthur controls like he's constantly a bit pissed, and frankly that seems appropriate. The missions are also a bit like a dinner party run by a control freak, and if you step out of line once, the game remonstrates you for being daring enough to have a unique thought. If those things were a bit better, this game would be number 1. But with its innumerable memorable moments, its legendary characters, and its status as a fitting prequel to a game that was very nearly also on this list, it's a gaming experience that is only delivered by one company. And like all of the world's best things, they're Scottish too. Number 6, God of War.
Get in the boat, boy.
Imagine trying to bring nuance to a character that spent the previous generation shouting the entire Greek pantheon to death. It's like attempting to make a character out of the left one in Pong. But somehow God of War achieves this without completely disregarding the previous games. In fact, it's the recontextualizing of Kratos' past adventures that lends such immense emotional weight to the game's strongest scenes. The original God of War games were products of their generation, and so was God of War 2018. Leaving behind the frantic flurry that rendered most attacks as indistinguishable semaphore played in fast forward, God of War took from its contemporaries like Dark Souls in order to create a game that's far more calm and a reflection of the change in the character itself. Its visual design is unmatched this generation in terms of landscape, thrilling set pieces, and a massive bloody snake. It somehow managed to have a child companion that wasn't so annoying that you wanted to chuck him off the top of the mountain you were currently Deliverooing your dead wife up. It's such a strong way to start what I assume will be another trilogy. By the way, the ending practically throws up a "by the way, we're making another one" splash screen, and I'm completely on board for whatever they do to take the franchise forward. Will that mean playing as Atreus? Will we Mamma Mia our way back to Greece? Will the massive bloody snake still be kicking about? It better be, or I'm not buying the game. I mean, obviously I'm buying the game, but I'll be sitting in this chair complaining about it. I'll show them. I know it's been 2 years, but I still don't want to spoil it. If I was doing a top moments of the decade, then that bit with the thing that takes out from under the floorboards would be top 3 easily. I thought that's where things were headed, and when it finally happened, I was like what I presume people feel like at the birth of their first child, except unlike that waste of money, I got to use them to decapitate an army of the dead, which is obviously loads better. Number 5, Mass Effect 2.
I brought you back. It's up to you to do the rest.
Mass Effect 2 is an RPG that is so good that it actually makes me quite angry that no one's gotten around to making a better one. Not only is floating around in your spaceship just pure wish fulfillment, they filled that spaceship with memorable characters, each with their own rich backstory and character arcs. The missions are full of brilliant action, and the combination of Shepard's abilities with your crew members means that each encounter can be unique and infinitely varied. Although I always took Garrus because I wanted to see if I could shag him. The game still looks brilliant thanks to an art design that pays tribute to the greats of the genre without looking like random bits of Star Wars here and a random bit of Star Trek there. In the time since, there's been a lot made about how the choices aren't actually as varied as once thought, thanks to their use in the conclusion of the trilogy, but at the time the magic trick completely worked. I played through the game enough times to answer every question exhaustively, and I genuinely felt like it was all in service of a bigger story. It's a game that's not afraid to get dark either. It truly is the Empire Strikes Back of Mass Effect. Extremely important characters can be killed never to return, and this is the game's way of showing you that if you didn't care about them enough to actually follow through with them and make sure they're comfortable as part of your crew, you're not a good enough captain to get a perfect ending. The first time I ran through the suicide mission, people were dropping like flies. It was only on my second playthrough that I realised that the game wanted more investment from me and wasn't simply going to point a big golden arrow towards a happy ending with no effort. A Mass Effect 4K trilogy is right up there for me next to the discovery of immortality in terms of things that I need in my life. I can keep hoping. For the Mass Effect trilogy, I'm not that bothered about immortality really. Have you seen the state of the world? Number 4. Overwatch.
We can make a difference again. The world needs us now, more than ever. Are you with me?
I hate multiplayer games. They bring out the worst in me. So at first the idea of spending 50 quid on a game that was exclusively multiplayer was about as appealing as taking that money and giving myself a paper cut between my toes. However, Overwatch is so good that you'll practically forget your disdain for the rest of the human race. When your team is doing well in Overwatch, it's like the best night out of your life. All your pals are there, the drinks are cheap, and everywhere you go has the atmosphere of a Champions League final. When it's going badly, it's like you got on the train for the night out, it spun off its tracks and fell into the Clyde. Like all the best multiplayer games before it, its strength is in its cast. It's very easy to fall in love with a character after only playing with them for a short while. Like if you're an edgelord, you've got Reaper, if you're an e-girl, you've got Diva, and if you're a prick, you've got Hanzo. It also managed to integrate enough lore into the game, despite being multiplayer only, that you start to have a real affection for the characters and how they play off each other. Yes, it's slightly more difficult to experience the nuanced character building when you're screaming at your team to get on the payload, but honestly I wouldn't trade those moments when all seemed lost but a few good ults give you the win for anything. I played Overwatch more than any other game this generation, and it only has 3 proper game modes. You must be doing something pretty spectacularly right if you can hook me for that long without much variation. It's like chess, but not incredibly boring. Number 3. The Last of Us.
You mumble in your sleep. I hate bad dreams.
Yeah, me too.
The opening 10 minutes of The Last of Us are a microcosm of how games have grown up. The people helming the biggest games in the world grew up with them, and as such they're the ones that have led the medium into its current golden age of narrative storytelling. The Last of Us takes the language of prestige television and translates it into a game that renders 2 of the most iconic characters of the decade and has them travel across America, ripping out your heartstrings and making you ruin your trousers in equal measure. The confidence in the Joel and Ellie relationship is impressive in a way that most games don't come within the same postcode as. Thanks in no small part to the performances of Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson, this was the title that secured Naughty Dog's status at the top table of games development, flanked only by Rockstar and maybe 1 or 2 others. And to think, this is the studio that had most recently been throwing Nathan Drake out the back of a plane and having him shoot all of the world's ancient treasures into dust. Zombie games are incredibly trite. Nowadays you'd have an easier time coming up with a new letter for the alphabet than a zombie game that doesn't feel like a George Romero tribute act. While The Last of Us certainly borrows from the greats of the genre, as well as a heaping helping of Cormac McCarthy, they did what games seem to fail in doing more and more these days: they made the clickers scary. Unless you knew what you were doing, getting stuck in a room with 2 clickers bearing down on you and not a single tin of beans to chuck at them, you were pretty screwed. Unlike something like Dying Light where you can practically enact zombie genocide via kicking, on the first playthrough the clickers were absolutely pants shitifying. Oh, and not only does it have one of the best campaigns in gaming history, it has a criminally underrated multiplayer mode that was so good that its removal from the sequel has genuinely dampened my excitement for it. Once me and my pals were playing against this terrible team, and for the last kill we dropped all our weapons, sprinted at the guy, and just punched him to death screaming down the mic. Not exactly the tone the developers were going for, but we all pissed ourselves laughing at the time, and it's moments like that which make The Last of Us even more special than it already was. There is no game I wish I could play again for the first time more than The Last of Us. Number 2. Minecraft. Minecraft is one of the most important games ever made. Period. It comfortably ranks among Tetris and the Mario franchise, not only in astronomical sales, but in its role in introducing so many to gaming. For many young people, Minecraft is their basis for their understanding of the art form. And what a game for them to be introduced to. Its premise is simple, its execution is efficient, but its scope is mind-blowing. When I started playing the alpha version with some friends, when few had heard of the game outside of enthusiasts, we would lament the lack of information, the need to check wikis in order to craft items necessary for survival, the labyrinthine methods for playing with your friends. It was like trying to put together flat pack furniture with half the instructions missing and the other half in a different language. But for some reason I couldn't stop playing. The feeling of discovering something like diamonds for the first time, or placing the final block on your skull castle, it instilled an almost childlike wonder with each of its totally person-specific achievements. When you begin the game, it looks by modern standards like a nondescript blocky mess, but it's the journey from punching trees to get wood, to create the first pickaxe, to mining your first cobblestone, that things start to fall into place. Hundreds of hours later, when you've built and abandoned countless homes, when you've done battle with those horrible death-rattling skeletons and spiders, and tragically lost a haul of diamonds down a mine after falling into lava, you realise that you've not thought about anything else for days. It's an almost staggeringly immersive game. The way the community around the game has taken a hold of it and shaped it in endless ways is a testament to its flexibility. Flexibility is unlikely the original developers could have possibly predicted. It's dominated YouTube. It's made careers out of countless content creators, and it's become the biggest game in the world, by far, for an entire generation. It's a cultural touchstone that will be referenced for the rest of our lives. We are still in the infancy of how Minecraft not only changed the gaming landscape, but pop culture as a whole. Not bad for a game without circles. Now we've come to the end of the list, and indeed the end of the decade, but before I reveal which game got the number 1 spot, I thought I'd run through some honourable mentions, some first losers if you will. You know me, millennial, always giving out participation trophies. Rocket League is a concept so simple every games developer before or since must be ready for quitting the industry forever out of sheer jealousy. An endlessly replayable piece of genius. I didn't pay a penny for it when it came out, and I feel like I owe the developers about 20 grand in compensation. Super Mario Odyssey is such an unrelentingly positive game. Its platforming is sublime, and it even uses the Switch's motion control in a way that's not detestable. It balances small, consistent wins with the larger goals of the world to create my favourite 3D Mario game and my favourite Nintendo game of the decade. But that's only because Wii Music came out in 2008. Borderlands 2 is the game that I almost failed my advanced higher English exam for. Yes, looking back, its writing does have the distinct width of the kind of comedy that Berks who enjoy Rick and Morty get off to, but it was a simpler time, okay? I was 17, who isn't stupid at 17? No RPG shooter since has grabbed me quite as tightly or compelled me to finish its missions so many times. I completed Borderlands 2 again this calendar year, and bloody Borderlands 3 came out about 20 minutes ago. It's a game that I'll keep completing until I'm drafted for World War 3, and even then I'll just take my Vita to play it on. Bet you thought the Vita wouldn't get a mention in this video, eh? For those of you that don't know, the Vita was like the Switch for people with taste. Anyway, I feel like I'm running out of time. Here are a few quick-fire ones. Titanfall 2 is the best first-person shooter since Modern Warfare. Tetris Effect is like if one of the best games ever was developed at the world's grooviest afters. The thrill of winning your first game of Fortnite is unmatched, and people only dislike it because it's popular and they're shit at it. There are loads more. Some you probably expected me to say for this entire list. They might involve bonfires or a silver-haired prick with 2 swords and yet 0 personality. But no, if you were expecting anything other than a big, obvious choice, then you're going to be like every Tinder date I've ever had, severely disappointed. Number 1. Grand Theft Auto 5.
Go to college. Then you're gonna rip people off and get paid for it. It's called capitalism.
GTA 5 is everything I love about games. It has a story that's so long and sprawling, it's kind of like a box set you start on Saturday night and then wake up on Monday afternoon wondering how you managed to watch the whole thing. It's a snapshot of American life in the pre-Trump era, but its satire still feels fresh today, even if at times it's only slightly less broad than spitting image.
Yes, we've invented something no one else has ever thought of. A small, personal, computerized device. Now you're going to be able to stay docked 24/7.
The game is 6 years old and it's still unmatched when it comes to open world games with a modern setting. Throw it on a good enough PC and there's barely anything on the market that can look as good as it. Although if you've got a good enough PC, what you should be doing is modding it so badly that it crashes. But that's barely half of GTA 5's story. GTA Online was an experience unlike any I'd ever had in a video game. It was a dream I've had since I first played Vice City, far younger than I should have. It was GTA with your pals. And while you could do this in GTA 4, GTA Online gave the community the keys to Los Santos and told them, go wild. And to say they delivered would be an understatement. A world of community creations, maps, races, game modes, all crafted from the base tools of GTA 5, where 1 minute you could be in a deathmatch inside Michael's house, and the very next you're driving supercars across a stunt map hundreds of feet above the ground. GTA was the series that I first experienced emergent gameplay. We wouldn't play the missions. Despite the great writing of those early games, I don't think 10-year-old me was clued up enough to get the pastiche of 80s Compton. Instead, we would set each other challenges. Who could survive for the longest with 5-star wanted level? Who could do the best trick on a bike? Who could glitch a car up to the top of a building and jump off it? We would do this for hours and hours without getting bored. GTA Online managed to bottle that feeling and expand it in ways that I could never have imagined when I first drove through the city. It's easy to lament GTA Online for the megalithic success it has become and what effect that may or may not have had on story DLC for GTA 5. But the amount of content the game now houses, along with the constantly growing community offering, makes GTA Online a game that you could literally play exclusively forever, and many do. I remember the feeling of holding a copy of GTA 5 in my hands. It was this one in fact. The game came out on the first day of my uni course and I remember being so nervous to go home and play it because I didn't know if it could possibly live up to my expectations. I was actually more nervous about that than the course itself, which considering what I now do as a job, was actually the smart move. Years later, on a different generation of console at 5 in the morning, howling with laughter to my pals in a party chat over blowing up someone's Zentorno and watching it flip away off the side of a mountain, I was happy to be wrong. It didn't meet my expectations. It surpassed them, further than I could have possibly imagined. Like I said, Scottish.
Tell you one thing, T. I'm getting too old for this nonsense. Oh.
So there it is, my definitive list of the top 10 games of the decade. I say definitive, but I'll almost certainly change my mind between finishing this video and it being published. Aren't subjective lists a laugh? It's been an amazing decade for games. Games are only getting better, and anyone that says otherwise is a jaded old fool that might as well jump in their grave now. Here's to the next decade. Hopefully we won't all be underwater, because those levels are always terrible. Until next time, I'm Jordan Midler. Now go away.